and welcome to our 5-part mini-series on what language coaching is and how it works for us. My name is Gabriella Kovács. I'm co-founder of the International Language Coaching Association, and I'll be looking into the techniques, what language coaching is, how it can work for you, whether you're new to language coaching or you're an educator, counselor, language trainer, teacher, interested to get to know more. You're more than welcome to get in touch with us, ask questions. If you've got any sort of ideas that crop up and you really want to connect with us, please feel free to go ahead. Okay, so this time we're going to be looking into how to unlock that potential that all our learners have. And as coaches, we believe that you can achieve and unlock that potential. So we're going to look a little bit into how that works. Now, first of all, just a quick recap from last time, where we looked around at what actually language coaching is. So we'll be looking at the definition. You can have a look at it here. You can just stop, freeze frame for a moment and read through it so that you familiarize yourself with what coaching is. Moving on, we're going to be looking into how coaching can work at a practical level. And point one, we're going to go through 4 brief points here. We're looking at what can create lasting breakthroughs. One of the most important things in language coaching is, which we looked at in part 1, is asking questions. Powerful questioning means that it's going to have a very big impact on the learner. It gets them thinking, it gets them in their head, so to say. So we're going to help them to uncover certain things that perhaps they haven't thought of before. So to spark that insight, we might ask something like, what have you been able to work on so far? So we have a positive slant on their approach to, for example, let's say something that they're working on in the lesson, or if we're referring to homework or some kind of journaling activity. So a number of things this sort of question can work with. What have you been able to achieve? Not what have you not done, or why have you not done something, which gets them on the defensive side, right? We can also be looking at a positive outlook for the future, which could be, what would you need to find 15 minutes of practice this week, which means we're looking at the possibility of finding time resources or other resources that the learner needs to work on, needs to discover and understands that they need to enable them to actually do that 15 minutes of practice, or however much time that might need to practice something. Less is more. So if we start with 15 minutes, that can very easily snowball into 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours a week. If we start with, right, you're going to need 2 hours for this, there's immediately going to be some kind of negative response to that, because that's quite a large chunk of a week. Even though we might be doing all out, doom scrolling, whatever, start with 15 minutes. To identify, to be very clear on what the roles are, how can I help you with that in mind? So the client, the learner, has expressed a need, a goal that they want to work on, let's say, and as a coach, I'm going to say, okay, so how can I help you with that in mind? Meaning, I'm helping you, but you're going to do the work, right? So what can I do to make this happen for you, to support you? So we're starting from a very supportive role. What else can we look at? We want to make sure that it's not some kind of thing in the future, but some kind of grey, hazy thing, but we want it to be something very specific, a goal that they can achieve, okay? So we want them to be consistent in the progress that they're making and help them to move forward. A very easy way is to use the GROW methodology or coaching model. Starts with goal. What is it that you want? Please specify. where are you now? What have you achieved, right? What is it that you've already done? What's going on at the moment, looking around? What is it that you could do? What can open up in the future, options, opportunities that can help you? And then what's the way forward? So what is your plan? What are you going to do? Very simple 4-step process that you can help your learners to work with in the future. We also want to be very clear on what their perspective is. So we want it to be something where they identify their communication landscape. So we want them to work with what they have, their abilities, their capabilities, their competencies. So we can start with a SWOT analysis. Some of you might be familiar with it. We start with, what are your strengths? What are you good at? Ask the learner to identify what their weaknesses are, their opportunities, and their threats. After we've identified the weaknesses, we move on to what sort of opportunities they might have and what sort of threats, basically challenges that they might face and what they have to overcome so that they can move forward. Again, it's a 4-step, very easy way to help them uncover their potential, to understand who they are, what sort of identity they have as language learners, as language users, people who are communicating in a certain landscape, if you will. We might also be looking at how to bring more positivity into the conversations that we have with our learners, so we can be looking at the positive insights, right? So looking at the situation where they are, whether they're stuck or they're just demotivated or they feel sort of like they haven't really got a goal, right? So we'd be looking at, for example, what kind of ideal situation they could imagine for themselves. How would someone respond to their success, right? Which is already bringing that sense of success and achievement into the room with us. So we've got a companion there, a positive companion, if you will. We'd be looking at imagining situations when you have limitless resources, right? What would that be like? And then what could actually help that come to fruition? And also looking at what could make your situation worse, which is a sort of a negative question, but it will probably make the learner laugh. At least that's how it works for me when I'm using it with my clients, because they actually say, well, I think if I did even more TV or scrolling on my various platforms and not really doing anything, then that would make my situation worse. And of course, that's not what they want, right? So it very quickly becomes this sort of dark mirror of, yes, no, I've got to actually do something. I can't keep coming up with excuses and not doing it because it's really just going to make my situation worse, right? So it's a very quick check back to you've got to be careful. What is it that you don't want to be doing? Okay, so what do you want to do to make your situation better? What is important is we want to reframe, okay, from moving from step back to strategizing the various opportunities, options that are there in front of the learner. So we can be looking at how to make them advance so that they look at perspectives, they want to make progress, and they will be looking for strategies, solutions that they need. And this is where we partner with them and help them to achieve their goals. Why is it so important to have self-awareness? Now, we might be, if you're in a teacher training, I don't know, professional development session, you might hear words like metacognition and why it's important. It's basically thinking about thinking. So when you make things a little bit more abstract, but in a way make it much easier, much tangible for the learner to understand what is actually going on, okay? So you want them to take control of their learning process. They have to understand what's going on in that process for them and not just spoon feed them. So we want them to understand, well, what do I need? What is it that's missing for me? What is it that I really want to achieve when I'm learning? And so very many times, I don't think I've ever had a learner that I've worked with who has not said that, gosh, that question, nobody's ever asked me that question. So you can always come up with a question that is going to help the learner just delve a bit deeper and want to understand really what is going on for me, so that then I can be a little bit more enlightened, understanding more what is going on for me. And then I can address it, and then I can move forward instead of like, I don't know. So what is it about language learners? We want them to understand how to learn, how to use the language, and also to have the motivation that they need. And for that, we want them to be curious and have an engaged mind. And this can work for any age group, right? So we want them to be more proactive. So take their part, be responsible for their learning, okay? And when they do that, it's going to bring in a lot of skills that are transferable, which means that they're not only going to be using language learning skills, but they're going to be using a number of skills that they can use in other areas of their life, learning other subjects if we're talking about people who are still learning because of their age, or they're learning something else that they need for their work. So they can transfer a lot of the skills that they're using in the coaching learning process. Also, we want them to understand that it's about genuine communication, that it's not only about, passing an exam or getting to another level, but to actually apply what they've learned in a different setting. So how do you design a successful learning path? Good question. If you want to look like the woman in the picture, the kind of person who's very self-confident and able to just connect with anyone in the target language, very often we need to realize that for our learners, the setback is not the grammar or the vocabulary, although that's what they usually start conversations with, that I need more grammar, I need more vocabulary. But very often it's about understanding what is holding them back from being more confident, and their past learning histories can be something that's pulling them back because they don't believe that they can do it. So they come up with a lot of excuses and a lot of reasons why they're not being able to make progress, okay? So they will understand that it's not about, talent, but it's practice. It's about being resilient. It's about being somebody who has a daily practice and has a mindset, a growth mindset that's going to represent that notion that they can move forward, they can do what they want with the language if they put their mind to it. So thank you for listening to this today. This was part 2. We're ILCA, we're the International Language Coaching Association. Get in touch with us if you want to know how your organization or you yourself, your peers, your colleagues can learn about language coaching and understand how it can transform the impact that you can have as an educator with your learners. Here are places where you can get in touch with us. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you very much for being here.